Well, hello and welcome into Off the Bench here. It is a Monday, right after Wild Card Week. It's still got one game left here in the NFL. I'm Reed Mouse. We got a fun show for you today. We're going to talk about the Duke Tobin comments. I know we went live on Chatterbox Bengals on Friday afternoon, but we're going to, it's our first time to talk about them on Off the Bench here in the morning, so we're going to talk about those a little bit. We're going to recap just a lot of these NFL games. I think it was a really fun weekend. The past few years, admittedly, as a big NFL guy, and I tried to overtly pin the NFL as superior to college football when I don't need to know that. We can just watch the sport and understand it. I tried to overtly do that and be like, man, Wild Card Weekend's the best. Last few years, Wild Card Weekend's kind of stunk. It was absolutely fantastic this weekend. Out of the 5 games, we got 4 absolute beautiful football games, and we might have another one here tonight. And then when, if we get time, we'll talk about, the Indiana Hoosiers and what they're able to do, or what they were able to do on Friday night was absolutely incredible. Won't talk about UC losing to UCF. It's the same story every game, and I don't know what else I can add to the conversation. That is Wes Miller being the head coach of the University of Cincinnati Bearcats. Our Xavier Musketeers, my Xavier Musketeers, got a win on Saturday against Providence, which, you start mapping out how they can do in the Big East, 6-7 win. What's that look like? Oh, I didn't even mean to do that. What's that look like in the Big East? And, they're going to have to win at home, and that's what they were able to do against a bad team in Providence. I still hold that they're one of, if not the worst team in the Big East, but maybe they can get some wins. Stone Shields, we were talking before the show started. I had a busy weekend. I don't know how often you guys think about your social battery, but my social battery has arguably not been lower in the past year and a half. Like I am draining in terms of having to talk to people outside of my immediate family. But Stone, you had a fun weekend as well. You were at a Packers household on Saturday night, which was a little depressing, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was fun for a while there. Pre-game, it was great. Vibes were great. First half was terrific. And then third quarter you're hanging on, right? Fourth quarter begins. The Bears had 6 points, not many at that time. And then, the life was sucked out of the room. But hurt me, too. I was all over the Packers. I've been all over the Packers for a while. Looked great for a second and then came crashing down. I know you're happy about that. Caleb Williams, your guy.
What does Colin Cowherd do on the show? Where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong. I was keeping close tabs on my NFL takes, my league-wide NFL takes, and I thought they fared well. They didn't bat 1,000. But I thought they fared well. And Caleb Williams and the Bears. Listen, I was trying to wheel and deal as the de facto fan GM of the Bengals a while ago. I was talking to a Bears fan. I was like, hey, man, back in September, I would have traded you Joe for Caleb and 2 firsts. Would you still do that? He looked me square in the face and said, hell no, I don't want to do that deal. So that one's off the table for the de facto. But Caleb Williams and the Bears, man, somehow snuck that out. I thought the Panthers looked good. Well, listen, we'll get into all of that. Trevor Lawrence played well. Justin Herbert, man, we think it's bad here in Cincinnati. We thought it was bad here in Cincinnati with the offensive line. I'm not sure I've seen a man fend for his life quite like Justin Herbert did last night. A lot of fun things. Also, Nick Sirianni, man, that was another one. Not to spoil the rest of the show, I've been out on Nick Sirianni for 3 years, and if Nick Sirianni got fired today, would he have a job this next coming season? I don't think he would. I think the Eagles know that too. I think they like it. Yes, I don't know, man. This is weird. This is it's weird. The NFL, there's a lot of context to talk about, but let's talk about the Bengals, and let's talk about the press conference from Duke Tobin. I know it's somewhat old news, but like I said, it happened at 1 p.m. on Friday, so this is the first time we've gotten a chance to talk about it here on the morning show. And there's going to be an open discussion between me and Stone for a great deal of this, because I'll say this. There was a buzzword before, all last week, there was a buzzword that Bengals were using, that when you're talking about the Bengals, that we had Paul Dehner, and he talked about this, and that was continuity. And I'd argued that though it's frustrating, though it sucks, it's always not the end of the world to have continuity. You don't want to be the New York Jets. where you're getting a new coach every 2 years. You don't want to be the Carolina Panthers where you're getting a new coach every 2 years. Like, you don't want to be those teams. Now, you don't want to be the Bengals where you keep Marvin Lewis way too long. It appears we're keeping Zach Taylor too long. Like, you don't want to be that either. But if you're on one side or the other, you'd probably want to lean towards continuity because you want to see things through. It's good to see things through. Like I said, if I was the New York Jets owner, at some point I'd just hire a guy and be like, hey, I'm giving you 3-4 years. You might be the worst coach that I've ever seen, but I'm giving you 4 years because I'm tired of hiring a new guy every year and a half. I know it's different in their media market, but listen, things like that. Continuity is better than a rotating door, but it's frustrating here in Cincinnati because, listen, Zach Taylor's been here long enough that we understand exactly what he is, and I call him the Tua Tagovailoa of coaches. I think that's a pretty fair analogy. Stone says that's too harsh. I think it's fair, and it's my opinion that matters here at the 10 o'clock hour. But it became abundantly clear during that presser that where continuity was the buzzword the 5 days leading up to it, there was a new buzzword that scares the ever-living crap out of me, and that is collaborative, right? They work together. That was the phrasing that Duke Tobin had to talk when asked about where their team is, how's their decision making, how do they go about getting this roster in shape for the upcoming season, and it's a collaborative effort. It's not Duke making the decisions. It's not Zach. It's all together, which is nice, right? Sounds like a nice kumbaya moment. But the reason that frustrates me, the reason that scares me, and has scared me for years, is I'm worried that this organization, and in fact, the worry is past. I feel like it's almost definitive fact that this is too insular. This whole operation, the mom and pop operation, the cheap Cincinnati Bengals, they're too insular. It's a silo in there to where there's no one standing up and like, hey, this works somewhere else where I've been previously, or we've had success. Let's try this, or let's try this new process. No, it's the same guys that all have come up mostly together in a very tight room where people are, I don't want to say not afraid to speak up and go against the grain, but they just don't know any better because, you know, when you're a scout and you start in the Cincinnati Bengals organization and you never leave and you go somewhere and you never go somewhere else, you don't understand how things work differently. You think the world is what it is if you never leave your hometown. You think that's how it works everywhere. And I've been beating the table that I don't even need to see Duke Tobin lose his job, though I have called for it. I don't need to see Zach Taylor lose, though I've called for it. The thing that I wanted most this offseason, the thing that I've wanted most for years past, is for someone new to come in there, someone with fresh eyes, someone that's from outside of the business. And it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take an uncomfortable stance that you're also going to have to give this guy, not just to have a new person in the building to have a new person in the building, but someone who has legitimate decision-making abilities, someone that has what I call juice, someone that has the capabilities to push a decision the other way. Because clearly what's happening right now isn't working. It's clear that it could be a collaborative effort, that it's not just Duke Tobin or Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor. It's not just those two in the small scouting department. It is a unified front of Cincinnati Bengals, people that have come up in this organization and only know one way. This organization does not have the talent, and I'm not talking from players, I'm talking from front office people. They do not have the talent and the authority to consistently put out winning products. They can continue to say, this is a championship level, we've rebuilt this time and time again. But I think we all understand that, yes, Duke Tobin built that 2021 team that went to the Super Bowl and then went to the AFC Championship. Yes, Duke Tobin was around here when Marvin Lewis meant to 5 straight playoffs with Andy Dalton and A.J. Green. Geno Atkins, fantastic team. He was around for that. But it's too thin in between. There's not enough. I almost used continuity there. There's not enough just continuing of bringing in talent. It's, yes, any fool can draft a great draft class if you get enough shots. If you just go by chalk and just what other people are saying, you're going to do okay. I don't think that this team can't ever have a good draft class. I've seen them do it before. The problem is I know they can't do it consistently. And it's because of what I already thought to be true was kind of laid out in front of them, is because they have too, it's too insular. It's a silo in there. I don't want to say it's too collaborative, but they need someone else from the outside that's had success, and it's going to cost money. It's going to require Duke Tobin or someone to relinquish some power in the decision-making process to bring someone else in here and be like, I think we should try it this way. I think we should do things this way. Stone, you weren't on the immediate reaction on Friday. Me and Craig Sandlin did an immediate reaction to the Duke Tobin thing. But for a while there, I'd worried that there's not someone that's willing to stand up or just doesn't have the wherewithal or the know-how to stand up and be like, I think we should do things this way. I think the organization is too insular, it's too silo-driven, that this team isn't going to have any significant change ever because it is too collaborative with the same minds over and over again. I don't know if you had that takeaway from Duke Tobin, and maybe I'm not portraying it the right way.
No, I totally agree. And it's just frustrating because he kept falling back on, well, we've done it before, we're going to do it again. Which, if I was in his shoes, to be very clear, and we were talking about this in our pre-show meeting, I don't think there was anything Duke Tobin could have said where everyone's like, all right, let's go, we're fired up. Thank God we got Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor still in place. I think this was only going to be negative for him. It seems like it certainly is. The takeaway that I've gotten from the fan base is that it is, very negative as far as what has gone on. But to continue to fall back on, oh, we've done it before, we'll do it again. Like, yeah, you've done it the 2 years you went to the conference championship and the 1 year you went to the Super Bowl. I'd be saying the same thing. But when you look at Duke Tobin's career here, throughout all the times he has overseen this team, his average record is 8-9, and that's not good enough. And he talked about the collaboration amongst the small amount of scouts. Well, maybe it's time to adjust and do it how everyone else in the league does it. Because you brought up a point a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was really interesting. I laughed at you when you said it. But it seems like when they have this whole plate of things that they need to get accomplished during an offseason, they can only dedicate so much time towards each thing, right? We talked about last year, they were so worried about paying Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and then it was like, oh, we actually have to fix this defense too. Like, I think that's a legitimate point that you made. Like, there's not enough people in there where they can, allocate enough resources to each thing that needs addressing on this team. So I hear what you're saying totally, and I just, my biggest takeaway is I don't think there's anything that Duke could have came out there and said where we're all like fired up and happy about him and support him.
So yeah, let's pivot to that and not to completely steal your take, but I'm in complete support with what you just said there, which is even before this presser came, and it was as big of a marquee presser as I've realized from a Bengals fan. Like, people were talking about it. They had buzz, genuine buzz, because we were so angry. We had the right to be. 3 straight seasons of Joe Burrow not making the postseason. That's a right to be angry. And the reason the Bengals aren't making the postseason is because they're not drafting well. Point blank. And the supplement of trying to get free agents, that's not working well either. So we were fired up. We were angry. But then you sat down, you think, and if you had a moment of reflection before the presser even happened, to go, what do I want out of this? What would I like Duke Tobin to say today? You couldn't find the answer. You couldn't find it because there is no proper answer. You just kind of want him to burn and squirm at the media table. There was nothing that Duke Tobin could have said that would have made me, that would have made Stone, that would have made you feel better about the 6-11 season that the Bengals just had. Own up to it, sure. Say things are going to, sure. But south of them saying, hey, we're going to, I don't know, a lot of resources into building a bigger scouting department, that would have been big, but that wasn't going to happen. Like, that's a pie in the sky thing. So there was nothing that Duke Tobin could have said there. And that's where I'll defend him. To where, I'm talking with, I had a family reunion yesterday. And one of my dad's cousins had worked for the Bengals for decades in the pro shop. And he pulls me over to the side and he's like, I'm out. I was like, what do you mean you're out? He's like, after the Duke Tobin presser, after the season, been season ticket holder, selling my tickets. Can't do it anymore. And I didn't push back on him right then and there, but I was like, well, what could have Duke said? And there was nothing. Everyone's like, man, he said some crazy things. Yeah, he probably tooted his own horn a little too much about what happened 4 years ago. You can't rely on that. It's not that you can't rely on that. It's just no one wants to hear it after missing the postseason for 3 consecutive years with Joe Burrow. I'll give you credit, Duke. Sure, I'll give you credit for this Super Bowl year. You did as good of a job this city has ever seen in one offseason. What you did to revamp that defense in one offseason was as good of a job as I've seen in professional sports in Cincinnati ever. Truly. But it was 4 years ago. And you had opportunities to revamp this team time and time again, and you just been unable to do it. So we don't want to hear it. But I will defend you in the fact of I don't know what he could have said that would have made us all feel better. Because there wasn't anything. It was already stated that he was coming back. It was already brought up that there is trust going forward. Maybe he could have lied to us and just said we're going to change our process of how we evaluate talent or something like that. But is not to take the lazy take here, not to do the lazy thing here, but is there anything he could have said that would have made us feel better? My answer is no. It's like we went 6-11. It's his fault. I don't know what else he could have said.
Yeah, I think it would have been nice for him to, and I understand why he didn't do this, but maybe call out some of the specific decisions that did not go Cincinnati's way. Because he brought up names like DJ Turner, Dax Hill, Miles Murphy, and unfortunately Jordan Battle, as well as kind of guys to build around. But one of his themes of his press conference, I think, was, well, we got to address the pass rush. Well, we needed to address it last offseason, and your decision was to draft a guy that had no production at the collegiate level. I think we would have loved to hear. Like, if he would have said that, I would have been like, okay, at least you're recognizing that. And I get they're hesitant to call out a guy that they took in the first round that's only played 1 year and was hurt for the majority of the year. But calling out some of those issues along the defensive line and saying, you know what, yeah, we re-signed B.J. Hill and T.J. Slayton, probably should have looked at an edge rusher. We had this philosophy that if we shored up, our run defense on the interior offensive line, that would help guys on the outside get home and get some pressure. And maybe that happened to some degree, but the reality of the situation is it didn't happen enough. So it's just, I think, frustrating that, we need to address the pass rush. That's how you win in this league. Well, we've been saying that for years. We've been saying that for years, and it hasn't been addressed properly, so that's incredibly frustrating.
I will. That was refreshing to hear that we've got to shore up the pass rush because I've been beating that drum. Listen, we can do the Caleb Downs thing again. I mean, Caleb Downs could be an incredible player, but it's hard for me to see that a safety is going to completely overhaul this defense. He could be an excellent addition, and if we get him, I'll be happy. But like, if you're asking me, Reed, you can get one thing this draft. What would it be? I was like, well, it's a no-brainer. You get a significant pass rush. Because even when Trey Hendrickson was great, and Trey Hendrickson was great, last year led the league in sacks. Even when he was great, the pass rush wasn't good enough because it wasn't happening from anywhere else, which of course creates deficiencies across the board. So that was nice to hear him say. Even though it's a layup, right? It's like pitching and power wins in baseball. We got to score and play good defense in basketball. Like, I understand that those are easy things to say, but it at least shed a little light on where they're going to put considerable resources this offseason, which that is a good question. It's like where, with the defense needing presumably 6 different defensive players, 6 different starters, where do you allot those high draft picks and that money that you have? And I think that we got that answer, which is they're going to put some significant pressure on that pass rush. They're going to try and supplement it in some ways, and they clearly didn't see a whole lot from Shamar. But man, oh man, when it comes to Duke, I will defend you in some regards. One is, yes, you get credit for 2021. No, you don't get as much credit as you think you get because it's 4 years ago. Like, that was, like I said, the best offseason I've ever seen a front office person make in Cincinnati in the history of professional sports in this town. But it's too far removed. And we have a collaborative, cohesive effort, which is nice. You don't want discord. You don't want fires popping up all around Paycor Stadium. But based off the way that they've drafted and the way that they've brought in free agents over the past few years, maybe you need a fresh set of eyes on whatever's happening there. A consultant to come in and be like, hey, I don't think you should do this way. Because it could be a collaborative. It can be all together, but man, oh man, it's just not good. Did you find it interesting? Because I think you've pushed back on the notion that me and Craig hold on Chatterbox Bengals that Zach Taylor has significant, I keep using the word juice, but he has some significant say in the drafting process. I don't know if you took that out of when it's a collaborative effort, but I kind of took that Zach has some say or significant say in who they're taking, or did you not read into that way, Stone?
My thoughts didn't really change on that. You know, they've said it's a collaborative effort for a long time. Zach has said it's a collaborative effort, so I believe that. But at the end of the day, it is Duke's decision, and that's why when you look at personnel, I fault him much more than I fault Zach. I think Zach certainly has more pull than a lot of other head coaches in the league. Like we were talking about Philly to start the show. Like,
yeah, you think Nick Sirianni's getting in Howie Roseman's ear? He's like, I think we should take this player.
No. So I hear you. He's got more pull and a lot more say and is involved more in those conversations than other teams. But at the end of the day, these are Duke Tobin's decisions, and he needs to be, held at that regard.
Do you think that part of the reason that we in Cincinnati have a coach that has significant say, and it happens at different places around the league, but you mentioned Philly, who I think Howie Roseman, even though they lost in their game, I think we can all agree that Howie Roseman's probably the best, if not certainly one of the best front office people in the entire National Football League. The Chiefs, famously, like Andy Reid doesn't have really any say. Right. Doesn't have any say over there. Do you think that part of the reason, I think I answered this question, is just because we have such a small scouting department, we have such a small front office that they're just trying to get different brains in the room and hear different opinion or get different voices in there? Do you think that's why Zach and the coaching staff are, I guess what I'm asking is do you think it's out of necessity that Zach Taylor has to have say in who they draft?
Maybe. I think at the end of the day, it's just the way Cincinnati operates. They're a professional football team, and we want to compare them to all other professional teams, and we have the right to want to do that, but that's just not how it is, and it's really hard for us to wrap our head around a coach being in there and having that much pull, but that's just kind of how things are, right? Again, we've said this a million times. Most other places in the league, Zach is not currently the head coach still, but here in Cincinnati, you can get away with some stuff, and that's what he's getting away with right now, and look at Duke Tobin. He doesn't have a job as the de facto GM anywhere else. So it's just different here, and it's maddening, but it's just the way it is. Here's
a fun question that I mean it just spurred up in my mind, and it's kind of been asked before in different ways. Do you think that the way that the Bengals operate, the mom and pop, Mike Brown has in that family has their fingers involved in everything because they want to carry on Paul's legacy and everything like that, and because they're cheap, do you think that the Bengals ownership handicaps the Bengals by not getting different scouting, by not spending money on a big-time coach or any of those things? Do you think they handicap the Bengals more than being a small market handicaps the Reds in baseball?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know, because I'm a little
not
bit
quite there.
Yeah, not to completely change the subject, but with the baseball stuff, I'm a little bit different than you. I know your whole thing is that, well, it's the Dodgers aren't winning every year. They've won the past couple of years, but anybody can win. I don't know if like the Reds have the same chance of winning as some of these other teams in professional baseball. So it definitely handicaps the Bengals, no doubt. But I'm not ready to go that far yet.
No, you're right. You're right. It's not quite there. It's not quite there, but it's not far. It's not far either. Like, the way the Bengals operate is so far behind the best teams in the NFL. And that's the difference is when you start putting in guardrails to a league like the NFL has, via the draft, via the salary cap. Everyone are in the green, like the Brown family's in the green before they sell a ticket. The TV money covers the salary. Covers the salaries of all their players, and I think of their staff. Like, it covers it all. They're in the green the second they sell a ticket, which is just crazy to think about. But I do think just how mom and pop it is. There's no doubt that they're behind the eight ball to where these other leagues because this league has such great guardrails. It's information. It's developing new ways. It's not just money that rules the thing. So teams like the Eagles, teams like the Chiefs that kind of figure out new ways. The Ravens of circumnavigating the salary cap, of evaluating talent. They get above the eight ball, where in baseball it's just kind of money that pushes it all. But it's an interesting thing. They both definitely, both our teams here in town, they have problems. All right, let's talk about the NFL wild card. The past few years, is it uncharacteristic? Is it unfair for me to say that the last few years wild card rounds were kind of duds?
No, that's totally fair. Totally fair.
Yeah, I think it was this weekend. I like the NFL wild card. This is going to be sacrilegious to some of you sporting fans. I think I like the wild card round as much, if not more, than the first weekend of March Madness. Like, I think it's just great. Obviously there's not as many games, but when there's the games that they had this week to where there was one just boring game and the other four were absolutely amazing. There's very few things in sports that top that. So we're gonna talk about each game one by one, just giving our thoughts, just kind of firing from the hip on what we thought about it, starting with the Panthers and the Rams on Saturday. I'll say this. I didn't gamble at all on any of these games. The only one that really almost pushed me to throw some significant money on a game was the Rams-Chargers games, and I really liked the Rams-Panthers. I really wanted to take the Panthers plus 10.5. In fact, I was watching with friends. I was like, hey, man, I think the Panthers they're down 14-0. Being at home, you don't make the postseason. You can be 8-9 and not be a very good team. The way the Rams are playing, I just like the way things. I'll say this when it comes to Bryce Young, because the Panthers are almost at a crossroads about what they do going forward with him. You can't give him anywhere near what the top quarterbacks are getting. For a while there, it was if you were a franchise quarterback, you just got top money. Tua Tagovailoa, just doesn't matter. Didn't matter who you were. You got $50 million just by Brock Purdy. Didn't matter who you were. You got $55 million a year just by being a starting quarterback that you can build around. Bryce Young, you can win games with. I thought he played well against that Rams team. Obviously, it fell through at the last moment, but I thought he played well. But you can't. If their future is Bryce Young, he's a $30 million quarter. What did you think? What did you take away from Bryce Young and the way he played on Saturday?
Yeah, he played well. And I was mentioning this to you during our pre-show meeting, that everyone's going to hold him to this. Well, he was the number 1 overall draft pick, and the Panthers gave up so much to the Bears in order to acquire him. He's never going to live up to that. Candidly, it's not going to be close. But my takeaway was, okay, he's a starter. I think kind of certainly going into this year, and honestly kind of going into this game with the Rams, you're trying to figure out, like, okay, can this guy be our starter
do we need
going
to look
forward?
Elsewhere?
And I think he absolutely can be a starter. He needs a lot of help. You can't pay him. Again, he's going to you know, he doesn't seem like a selfish guy, but his agent's going to be like, well, we just went to the playoffs. We won the division. He was the first overall pick. Like, they're probably going to want a lot of money, and I agree. It should be around that Baker deal in Tampa, if that. And then, you know, try to build around him with a really good defense and some good weaponry. Clearly, the McMillan pick, they hit out of the park there as well. So he's never going to live up to that standard, but as far as being a top 30 quarterback in the National Football League, I think he can be that.
Right. He's not a Casey McAllister just put in the chat. He's below the Andy Dalton line, which is the parameter we use here in Cincinnati for if you're a starter level. I think he's right there. Here, you can clearly do worse off. I think that I don't know what he's worth money-wise. I mean, maybe if he's north of $30 million, which is kind of the going rate for a starting quarterback in this league, maybe you think about going somewhere else-wise. But I think that there's enough excitement there for Bryce Young that you could continue, and especially playing in that division that's not very good. You could do worse off. So I'm intrigued to see the future of Bryce Young because I think Dave Canellis is a pretty good guy, pretty good coach. And I think he showed that. Do you hold the opinion that the Rams can win the Super Bowl? Because a month ago, they were far and away the best team in the NFL. Everyone would have said a month ago, like, oh, pick one team, I'll take the Rams. Matt Stafford, Sean McVay, they've done it before. They look to be a complete team. They obviously have not played well for the past month. Do you think they can win the Super Bowl?
I do. Yep, I do. That drive from Stafford, man, was incredible. 2-minute drill. Field goal does you no good. You need to get in the end zone. He made some great throws. He was poised. He was composed. And I always think it's great to see these elite quarterbacks do that. Brady did it all the time and just, we need a touchdown here, 2-minute drill, couple timeouts, let's go. And that's what Stafford did, and it was easy pickings for him. So as long as they have that, they have a chance. Devontae came back. I hadn't seen him in several weeks. He was really solid for them. Puka was great, did drop the touchdown. But with those two weapons and that quarterback, absolutely. But I do think you have to be a little bit concerned that, Carolina hung 30-plus on you, and you're going up against the Bears team that scored 25 points in one quarter. So they might have to get in more of a shootout than I think we thought a while back. But with that head coach and that quarterback, absolutely a contender.
Yeah, we'll see. I just Everett was on just said the narrative that the Rams have not played well the past month is wild. I mean, yeah, they lost to the Seahawks by 1 point in a high-scoring game. They lost to the Falcons. They beat the Cardinals. I don't know. They just weren't the same Rams that everyone started hitching their wagon to, like, this team can win the Super Bowl. I think, yeah, I'm with you. Before the playoffs started, people ask me, we talked about on the show, like, what are you looking for in this postseason? Because I think it's a big question for the first time in years. You're not like, oh, there's Patrick Mahomes, they're probably going to do it. And then there's the 49ers or the Eagles on the other side, they're probably going to win the NFC. Or there's no Tom Brady, whatever it was. This was the first time in years where it felt like, man, this thing's wide open. I don't know where it's going to go. But I fell back on the training of saying, I'll just take the best quarterbacks, and the best quarterbacks are Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford, and they both moved on, and we'll see continue. Let's talk about the Saturday night game. Man, what a game! The Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers lived up to the billing. The Bears 25 points in the fourth quarter. I do think conspiracy here. I do think they dropped that Alex Bregman news perfectly timing for the Cubs. You thought I was going to go a whole hour without bringing up Alex Bregman to the Cubs, but I think they dropped that news when they were down 21-3. They well timed on the Alex Bregman news to the Cubbies. But here's what I'll say about this. It has come out that the Packers are going to probably work with Matt LaFleur and get a deal done, which is I can't believe that they would even entertain that. Jordan Love's you like Jordan Love more than I do, but I still think Jordan Love's really, really good. Caleb Williams. I mentioned at the top of the show, it feels like some of my takes worked well this weekend, and one of them is I have defended Caleb Williams from the get. There are few players in the NFL that I've ever watched that constantly wow me like Caleb Williams does. There's a lot of fluff there. There's a lot of times where you're sitting there like, man, that was not good. Or that doesn't look like the build quarterback that Caleb Williams is. But except for like prime Rodgers and except for like current Josh Allen, do I sit down? I don't know a quarterback that I sit down and I watch where, once again, there's a lot in the game where I'm like, ugh. But every once in a while, the play on that fourth down, one of the best plays I've seen, where you just go, man, this dude's unbelievable. Where if you want to use the jaw-dropping, I don't know if that's an analytic, but jaw-dropping ability, Caleb Williams has that. There's few quarterbacks in the world that can do what he can do on any given play. He's not perfect. In fact, there's going to be a lot of lean years and a lot of lean time, but, man, when he's on, you understand why he got the billing that he did. You understand why Ben Johnson wanted to come. You understand why he was graded as or thought of as the best prospect since Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck or whatever, because there's few quarterbacks that have as much horsepower as Caleb Williams does. I know you're not as high on Caleb Williams as I am.
Yeah.
But, man, every once in a while he does something in a game. You're just whew.
Yeah.
There's very few people on this that have ever played this sport that can do those things.
Yeah. The 4th and 8 was, as you mentioned, one of the best plays I've ever seen. I mean, if they don't get that, the game's over. Green Bay wins. There's, 5 minutes left. It's 4th down. You're down 2 scores. Absolutely had to have it. And, the image that's kind of going viral is he's got the ball in the air and neither foot is on the ground and just layers it perfectly over the defender. I think there was 4 guys around his receiver. It was absolutely incredible. They got some good fortune with some missed kicks from McManus. Certainly missed 2 field goals and an extra point. That is huge. I think, I remember it was 21-3. Green Bay has a kick. Granted, that was a longer one to go up 24-3 going into half. They miss it, and it's like, well, that might come back to bite them a little bit. But you got to give Caleb Williams his credit. Clearly, he was – I remember there was some dialogue like, are we sure? Should Drake May go over him? Should Jaden Daniels go over him? And I'm like Drake May, and I would take Drake May over Caleb Williams right now every single day. But Caleb Williams there had to go number 1 based on the talent that he has, and that's coming to fruition here with Ben Johnson. Deserves a lot of credit. But to me, the X factor in this game is Colston Loveland.
Yeah,
So
that dude's a gamer.
I'll go hand up accountability on him. I didn't think he was going to be able to translate this well to the NFL, and he's the reason why you won the game. What he did from a blocking perspective, a catching perspective, and a run-after-catch perspective as well. Over 100 yards. He was tremendous. Heck of a pick from Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, and those guys. So got to give Chicago credit. Ben talked about it after the game. Is that a formula that you can rely on? No, but if you win a couple more games, you're in the bowl. So, credit to them for that. Give me the Rams this weekend.
I've asked you before about the 2024 versus the 2020 draft class. Yeah. Did you anticipate that I was going to ask about it again? Because Caleb Williams beats Jordan. Jalen Hurts loses. Yeah. 2024 draft, Drake May wins, beats Justin Herbert.
Oh,
Do you want to take back the 2020 versus 2024?
No.
You worried about it at all, though?
No, I'm not. I'm not. We can keep talking about it, though. We can keep talking about it.
Yeah. And we will.
It's worth talking about.
We will.
I'll give you that.
We will continue. Caleb Williams, Drake May. We'll see. Bo Nix plays next week, too. We will see. We will see.
What's McCarthy doing?
9? You're talking about 9?
Yeah, what about Penix?
Yeah, what about Tua? We want to do that. We want to do that one. It's interesting. Those are both obviously great draft classes, and I like teasing you on that one. All right, let's talk about. Well, by the way, Jordan Love. Like I said, you're very high on Jordan Love. That's a guy that it's sometimes frustrating. Like he's really really good, but like Caleb Williams, there's moments where you're like, man, that was a terrible drive, or that was a terrible. Just not consistent enough. He's much more consistent than Caleb Williams. But Jordan Love, that dude's a gamer. Like he's not an elite quarterback, but in that second tier, he's right at the top of that list. I know you like him a lot.
Yeah, no, I thought. In the first half, he came out guns blazing. He was perfect. Over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Thought he played really well, but all those punts, particularly in the third quarter, when you had an opportunity where it's like if you just go down and kick a field goal, you're, creating some distance here between you and Chicago. And that to me, I mentioned Colston Loveland, again, the brilliance of Caleb Williams. But what did Chicago do defensively? I think they started bringing some more pressure. But that defensive front played totally different in the second half. So whatever adjustments they made, and I know people poke fun at, halftime adjustments, what real adjustments can you actually make? I don't know, but they did some crazy stuff there because that defense for the Bears looked like a totally different unit in the second half. They deserve a lot of credit for that. But, yeah, it kind of reminded you in a lot of ways of the regular season game a couple of weeks ago at Soldier Field where the Packers were dominating. Of course, Love got hurt in that game, but then the Bears come storming back, make plays at the end. Caleb Williams' brilliance, and they get it done. But LaFleur said it after the game, this is going to haunt them for a very, very long time. Anytime you have that big of a lead in the playoffs and lose, I'm sitting there, I was getting all excited. I'm like, they're going to go into Seattle and compete with them as the 7th seed, and they blow it.
Imagine, listen, we here in Cincinnati, we talk about, man, I just wish things can get good right now. Imagine being a Chicago sports fan on that Saturday night. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. You beat your arch rival on an incredible comeback. the same time, the baseball team signs a $200 million guy that can change the team too. Man, you got to celebrate the wins, and happy for the Chicagoans. Happy for the Chicagoans today. Buffalo Bills, Jacksonville Jaguars. Another great game, 27-24. Josh Allen, he's got to be the best quarterback, certainly the best, because his playoff stats are incredible. He's the best quarterback to have never even been to the Super Bowl. No? He's got to be.
Yeah. No question.
He goes for 270 passing, scores 2 touchdowns on the ground. We criticize the Bills a lot, and I like that Jags team, and I still like them going into next year. We criticize the Bills a lot for just throwing the cape on Josh Allen and saying, hey, go be Superman. But if there's anyone that you can do that to, it's Josh Allen. And sometimes you are thrust into that being your game plan because he can do that. You can just rely on him. Just go like, hey, we're gonna have you just go win this game for us. Can you go get it done? And he does exactly that. Josh Allen, I've said this before, outside of Joe Burrow, and the reason I like Joe Burrow more is because he wears stripes. I'm not sure there's a quarterback I've ever enjoyed watching more in the history of me watching football than Josh Allen, because it is a blast to watch him play every single time. What was your takeaway from this game?
That to me was, and we'll get to Purdy in a second, but what he was able to do in that game is unbelievable. And you mentioned the stats, and the stats are solid, but you really needed to watch every snap of that game to fully understand how great Josh Allen was. The Bills, from a talent perspective relative to Jacksonville, and I'm not just saying this because I was on Jacksonville, they had no business winning that game. They won that game solely because of Josh Allen. The things that he had to overcome in the game. Came into the game with a foot injury, bangs his index finger on his teammate's helmet. That's not good for a right-handed quarterback. His knee, when he's rushing in for the first rushing touchdown he had, is all jank, his left knee, right? And then he's getting checked out in the blue tent for a concussion and a neck issue. So he's got the foot, he's got the knee, he's got the neck, he's got the head, he's got the finger, and he's just battling through it all, doesn't miss any time, and plays exceptional football. And he's dealing with Khalil Shakir, and I don't mean to disrespect him. He's a great player, but, like, that's your top target, and you couldn't really run the ball, and you're the best rushing team in the NFL, and the Jags really did a nice job of mitigating James Cook in that ball game. It was all Josh Allen. It was spectacular. I'm going to be pulling for him against Denver, but if they pull that off again, I mean, this is all-time stuff. All-time stuff from Josh Allen. What a performance.
Yeah, no, go look at his postseason stats if you ever just want to be in awe, because fairly or unfairly, you are graded on your postseason success. You are graded about – that's why Joe Burrow, who's incredible, we watch him every week, when he plays, he's still held in such high regard because he's beaten Patrick Mahomes. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's been to the AFC Championship. He's beaten Lamar. He's beaten Josh Allen. He's beaten them all. Just obviously didn't beat Matt Stafford in the Super Bowl. Unfairly or unfairly, you are graded about your wins in the postseason. But if you just talk about numbers, I don't know if there's ever been a better quarterback in the postseason. Not just quarterbacks that have not won the Super Bowl, but Josh Allen consistently throws for like 250 to 300 yards, goes for almost 50 to 100 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. He's otherworldly, and he's the most fun quarterback that I've ever witnessed from a team that isn't my own. I'll ask about Trevor Lawrence. I'm a Trevor Lawrence defender. They had a great year. I thought, obviously, a couple turnovers. He didn't play great. If he played great, they probably win. But Trevor Lawrence played well, I thought. Is that too lenient, or how did you think Trevor Lawrence played?
I think he played well. I think people will say that he didn't just because of how great his counterpart was in the game, of course, in Josh Allen. I thought he played his best in the fourth quarter, which is huge. I think the Jags had some opportunities there in the first half. Like, you go into halftime, the Jags were losing. You're sitting there like, how in the world is that possible? He had the play. It's just one of those, you talk about it all the time in postseason football. One play that doesn't quite go your way can spin the game on its head. They had the fumble that they recovered on special teams, and they go for it on the fourth down, and Lawrence had it, but his knee or his shin, whatever, just grazed the surface, and ultimately that results in no points. Looked like they're probably going to at least certainly score a field goal, probably a touchdown. if not. So that kind of flipped the game on its head. The first interception was horrible. Just didn't see the linebacker. That can't happen in that moment, especially against Josh Allen. I don't bang him too much for the last one. It was tight coverage, fine ball, good play by Buffalo, and they deserved to come away with it. But I thought he really, because Allen there in the fourth quarter really started to go, and Lawrence was right there with him, responding and taking those blows and scoring. And the final touchdown for Jacksonville was an absolute zip there in the end zone. So I thought he played fine relative to Josh Allen. Obviously not close to that level, but I think – people are making fun of that reporter for, kind of complimenting Liam Cohen on the year. But my take on that is, it's Jacksonville. And they had all those wins. They were as hot as they were at the end. They were right there with Josh Allen. That's an overarching success for Jacksonville this season. Overarching success.
Year one, Liam Cohen, there was big questions about Trevor Lawrence being a quarterback of the future. I mean, you were locked into him.
Yeah.
But I think those questions have subsided just off of the year that they've had. Listen, like Jacksonville – they're a good team. I don't know if they'll consistently win the South, but that's a good team. That's a good coach. That's a good quarterback. He's not what Lawrence isn't what they thought he was going to be when they drafted him, but he's a good quarterback. He's someone that you can win games with and win in the postseason with. Truly believe that. Let's go to the next game. Is there a weirder team, man, in the history of sport than the Philadelphia Eagles? 4 seasons ago, I guess 3 seasons ago, they look like the best team in football. They go to the Super Bowl. They lose. And a heartbreaker to the Chiefs. Just got outplayed in the last few moments. Next year, they start 10-1. Once again, look like the best team in football. And then they lose every game for the rest of the year and get blown out in the postseason. Last year, they look like the best team in football. Dominate the Super Bowl. This year, at certain points, they looked like the best team in football. And then just it got weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. And then you get in this postseason game and they get upset by the banged up San Francisco 49. I cannot for the life of me. And I maybe should give up trying to. Cannot understand this Eagles team. Because they very well could come back next year and look like the best team in football. And next year they could go sub 500 and that'd be a little more shocking, but I truly can't get my grip on this team whatsoever. A podcaster that both you and I listen to, Stone, and this is true, that I never even thought about. The weirdest thing about the Philadelphia Eagles this past year was they were a bad watch. Like, truly, like, not fun to watch. Like, just bored. Like, I don't want to call them quite the Iowa Hawkeyes, but it's close to that. Like, this was a bad one. I don't know what to make of the Eagles organization as a whole, other than that they could rattle off and be 16-1 next year and win the Super Bowl, and they could also fire Nick Sirianni. And I truly, I guess I'm giving up on having hard takes on the Philadelphia Eagles whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it shows a couple things. Number one, the importance of your coordinators. We saw that in Detroit certainly this year as well. You lose Ben Johnson, you lose Aaron Glenn, you lose the playoffs, right? Detroit's on the outside looking in. And Kellen Moore was terrific for Philadelphia and really helped elevate that offense, helped them win the Super Bowl. Didn't have him. He's in New Orleans. And you get this guy Patullo in, who's apparently good friends with Sirianni, and the whole year the offense just wasn't able to click. So I think that's certainly a huge thing. People talk about, well, I think maybe now you need these CEO head coaches. Well, Sirianni's an offensive guy, but without great coordinators, what value is he bringing? That's number one. And number two, besides last year, we used to always watch Hurts late in the year and be like, he just doesn't look like he's close to 100%. Like, he's not out moving around like he's healthy. And I'm not saying that was the case this year, but why isn't he running the ball if it's not the case, right? That was, that's part of what makes him so good is his ability to be an athlete outside the pocket. And, you saw all these quarterbacks that won, even Herbert who lost. Drake May, do they win that game if he's not running like that? No. Purdy had some huge runs in the game. Josh Allen had some huge runs in the game. And that's a strength of Hurts, and they don't tap into it at all, which is tough for me to understand because I'm a Jalen Hurts guy, but if you ask him just to win from within the pocket.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah. But I don't think he's, some top quarterback. But if you're asking him to win from within the pocket, it doesn't look good. And that's kind of the situation they found themselves in. So I don't think there's a world where you can bring back Patullo as the OC. There's going to be a lot of people in Philadelphia that don't want Sirianni back, despite the fact they've won the Super Bowl and he's been to 2 of the last 3. But, a fitting end for a really weird year. And it was different because you talked about how boring of a watch it was. Last year, they obviously wanted to lean on the offensive line and run the football too. But Saquon, it was like any moment he could pop off and run for 40
They're fun to watch.
Yards. This year, it was like the upside of Saquon was like 10 yards. So, yeah, I agree. It was a boring watch. Biggest takeaway, though, for me is Brock Purdy. If you just look at the box score, you go, that was fine. But Brock Purdy was outstanding in this game, and I would say he's the second most valuable player of wild card round behind Josh Allen.
Brock Purdy, man, I'm wrong. I was wrong about Purdy. I still don't know if he's worth the contract that he got. I still don't know if it's that. But when he first started and he's like 10-1 and everyone's right, because it was an awesome story. It was a great story. He's the final pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, and he's had the kind of career he has. So hats off to you, man. Like truly, like that's amazing, Brock Purdy. I still don't know if that contract makes sense. But we'll see. And clearly they won a game yesterday because of heroics from Brock Purdy. Let me ask you this question. Let's say the Eagles fire Nick Sirianni, which I don't know if that is going to happen. I don't know if it's I don't even know if it'll be talked about. It might not be. It'll probably be talked about in Philadelphia sports media, but that's just because it's Philadelphia sports media. I was wrong last year when I said they should have fired him mid-season after their slow start before rallying off the way that they did. If Nick Sirianni gets fired by the Philadelphia Eagles, does he get a head coaching job next year?
No, he doesn't. And, we talked about with like Brian Kelly in college, right? Like, he just doesn't seem like a likable guy. Like, I respect how he goes to the podium after the game. He took ownership for the loss. I give him credit for that. But this isn't some guy I think that other teams would be jumping at to be their next head coach, especially because he's quote-unquote an offensive guy and he's called plays in the past. But you would think that he would, look to take over play calling. We saw what Campbell did in Detroit. Like, when things are that bad, and they were horrible for Philadelphia this year offensively, maybe he would step in and try to do something about it. He did not. So I don't know if he would land an OC job, to be completely honest with you. And it'll be fascinating to see what Howie Roseman does, because we've seen in the past, he doesn't care. Right? If it's bad, he'll move off you. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. See ya. Wouldn't surprise us at all if he did that.
Yeah. No, it's almost like trying to keep control kind of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. Nick Sirianni thing's really, really interesting. There's just it's such a weird team, man. Like, from all the A.J. Brown stuff to there's clearly some discord with Jalen Hurts in the locker room, mainly around A.J. Brown. Like, there's clearly something weird that happens there, and it's a team that I'm giving up on figuring out. All right, final game that we'll talk about. Justin Herbert loses to Drake May. 2 takeaways. 1, Justin Herbert might have a worse offensive line than the Bengals had when we went to the Super Bowl and went to the AFC, which is saying something considering Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times a game back then. Secondly, I'm a Justin Herbert believer. I think he's great. I think he's borderline elite. I don't know if I saw elite at all, even with all the problems that he had, and it's not on his fault. But I think if we saw Joe Burrow there yesterday, we'd see him react a little better. I think with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes facing against those with that offensive line trouble yesterday, I think we would have seen a little bit different results. I still am a huge Justin Herbert believer, and Drake May is a dude. I know it was a low-scoring game. Drake May is a dude. I asked if who was going to be the young guy that steps up and puts his name on the top of the pedestal. Like, I'm the next guy in waiting. It's probably Drake May after yesterday. Your thoughts on the Chargers and Justin Herbert?
I think people are gonna, I'm sure they already are just ripping him apart because, as you said, you get judged off how you play in the postseason. I think that would be incredibly unfair. I think it's fine if we sit back and say, yeah, he's a great player, but let's not put him up there with Allen and Burrow and Mahomes, those guys. That's totally fair, and I think that's accurate. But to say he's not a great quarterback or not a franchise quarterback or he's never going to win the postseason, that's all ridiculous. I mean, that offensive line, man.
Correct.
Like, we talk about the one that Burrow had in 21 when they went to the Super Bowl. Like, this is significantly worse than that. I mean, he had absolutely no chance. I agree with you. If it's Burrow out there or Mahomes,
Yeah,
it looks a little better.
Different. It looks different.
It looks a little better. It doesn't look as bad, but he didn't have a chance. And apart from that, too, his guys weren't winning. And I like Ladd McConkey a lot. But Johnston there on the outside, wherever Gonzalez was for New England, it was locked down. I know he got hurt at the end of the game, but he had nowhere to go with the football. He had no protection. You knew it was kind of going to be an ugly, low-scoring game, but they could never get anything going offensively. I'm not out on them, but 0-3 in the playoffs, and all three have been ugly games for the Chargers, so that's just something that he's going to have to deal with as he continues to navigate through his career.
It's when it comes to Herbert, you 100%. If there's a person that sits here and goes, he's not a franchise quarterback, he's not a good quarterback, anything like that, they turn it off, right? Don't listen to that because that's an absolute silly thing. Justin Herbert has been at the doorstep for 5 years now of wanting to enter the elite quarterback conversation. And some people will put him in there, some people leave. Well, whatever it is. You know, when you throw for 9,300 yards in your first 2 years, throws for 5,000 yards in his second year, 43 as a rookie. And then you make the postseason, and you made the postseason 3 times. They've been wanting Justin Herbert, and he's earned the right to be the number one contender or be on the doorstep of let me in the elite quarterback conversation, the same way that Lamar, Josh, Patrick, and Joe have earned. But every time he's gotten there, he hasn't cemented himself to get through the threshold, if you get one. Like, he hasn't. He absolutely deserves to be in that conversation perennially, like consistently. But until we see him take that step, we're like, man, I can't do it. Like, I cannot do it. Because even though it was a terrible game by his offensive line, even though guys weren't getting open, several plays yesterday, we were like, it just looks uncomfortable back there. Not the same way that we'd see a Patrick or a Josh or a Joe treat those kind of situations. So I'm a Herbert believer. There's few quarterbacks. I mentioned Caleb Williams. When you watch Caleb Williams, if you watch an entire game multiple times, you will be absolutely wowed. Truly wowed. I'm not sure if there's a quarterback that looks more like a quote-unquote quarterback than just 6'6", has a cannon, fits the bill and everything like that. He looks like what you imagine a great quarterback to look like. We just haven't seen him get over the hump in the postseason. Justin Herbert's unbelievable. Drake May is really good. I'm excited for next week's game. I'm excited for tonight's game with the Steelers. Hopefully the Steelers lose by 1 million because that would make me happy. All right, 11 o'clock show, Stone. What's coming up on the Stone Shield show?
Similar, but I've got a bunch of new takes that I saved for the 11 o'clock hour. So we're going to rehash Tobin, be my first time kind of giving thoughts on that. And then we'll go through all the games again there as well. Do have some interesting points I want to make, but just a great weekend of football. And, it deserves a full hour of our time here on a Monday.
No doubt. Indiana Hoosiers, better than the 2019 LSU Tigers?
Ooh! I think that's a fun conversation that we can have. I think there is a chance. Yeah, I'm not putting Fernando Mendoza as the Joe Burrow or anything like that. And obviously that was a more – I don't know, man. Looks kind of similar, though. Are you going to take Raiders to win the AFC in year 2 of Mendoza? No. You're not going to take the Raiders to win the AFC 2 years from now? You said collegiately. You didn't project anything to
I'm
the
just
NFL.
Saying. I mean, maybe we're just in a time loop here. Also, the Chicago Cubs got Alex Bregman. The Cubs have the second best lineup floor in the league. See you guys tomorrow.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. We are live. It is Monday, January 12th. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us through Off the Bench into our second hour of programming here at Chatterbox Sports. Got a lot that we need to talk about on today's show. We're going to spend some time, of course, talking about the Cincinnati Bengals and Duke Tobin. He had a press conference on Friday. Unprecedented stuff. Right, usually we don't hear from him until the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama, but lots of media members gathered at Paycor Stadium last Friday, and Duke Tobin spoke for over an hour. Press conference clocked in at 63 minutes. He sat there and he was getting peppered with some questions from local media, of course, and worked his way through it. And lots of takeaways that we have to get to on today's show about that. Craig Sandlin, Reed Mouse did an instant reaction video, went live actually last Friday after the press conferences had their thoughts, and it is now time for me to share some thoughts there on that press conference there as well. Also, a loaded NFL wildcard weekend, really incredible slate. And I feel like this year in the NFL, regular season-wise, kind of a down year, right? We didn't get many or as many classics as I think we have in recent years. Certainly some really good games, but overall, start to finish, didn't think it was a great regular season for the NFL, but they responded with an incredible wild card weekend. I expect that, by the way, to continue with tonight's game, Pittsburgh and the Houston Texans, but we're going to work through all those games, lots of different takeaways on quarterback play, head coaching, play calling, weapons stepping up, making plays, rookies making some huge plays there as well. So I've got a lot of takeaways and a lot of thoughts on all those games. Certainly want to share those with everyone here on today's show. And also, as I mentioned, a game tonight, Steelers and the Houston Texans. Don't love saying this, but think I am going to be on the Pittsburgh Steelers here tonight. But would invite everybody to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. On our way to 22,000 subscribers here at the channel. We are live every single weekday, 10 to noon here at Chatterbox. And you can find different interviews and segments out on YouTube, certainly on social media there as well throughout the course of the day after we are done being live. Had a great couple of guests last week. Chris Welsh came on the show, Cincinnati Reds broadcaster. That video's up on the channel there as well, and you'll see some more clips on social media additionally, but looking to get some more good guests on the show this week. But today it's me, you, and some football that we're going to talk about. So let's dive right in here. Appreciate everyone as always. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast and give us a thumbs up on the stream if you haven't done so already. But let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals, and let's start with Duke Tobin. As I mentioned at the top of the show, unprecedented stuff, right? To have this media availability, as I mentioned, we usually don't hear from Duke Tobin until the Senior Bowl down in Alabama. And credit to him and credit to the organization for saying, you know what, you need to stand here in front of the fire and take some bullets here for this franchise and, answer some of these questions from local media. And I give him credit for that. I also give him credit for doing it for as long as he did. Over an hour, 63 minutes sitting there answering questions, and lots of good questions were asked, and certainly some repeat questions there as well that Duke Tobin kind of had to deal with. It wouldn't have surprised any of us if it was 15 minutes. He had an opening statement about, oh, you know what, we came short of expectations. It's disappointing. It can't happen again. We're looking to get better for next year. I'll take some questions, do it for 12, 15 minutes, and then move off of it. That's not what happened. He sat up there for over an hour and did a nice job answering questions. But not to defend Duke Tobin here in this spot, but I don't think there was a world where the Bengals fan base stopped watching that press conference and said, all right, let's go. Duke Tobin, our guy. Let's support him. This is going to be great. Turning the page to 2026. I don't think that was a possibility to be overwhelmed with joy after this press conference. I think the takeaways were going to be pretty negative, but I do think there were some things that Duke Tobin could have said / should have said that he did not say, and I think that ultimately is very disappointing. And my biggest takeaway as it relates to this was Duke Tobin basically falling back on, well, we've done it before, so we can do it again. That was kind of my biggest issue. And again, I'll be completely honest with you. If I was Duke Tobin in that spot, what would I be talking about? Yes, I would be talking about the Super Bowl run in 21. And yes, I would be talking about the subsequent AFC title run the following year. Why wouldn't you if you were him? But I also understand as a fan base that it is very, very frustrating to sit there and lean back on that when it's like, hey, it's been 3+ years since that happened. That is history here at this point. We are a long way removed from going to the Super Bowl and going to the AFC Championship. So he has this narrative that, it's been like a well-run organization in the past. It's kind of the vibe that I got. And the reality of the situation is that is just a false comment from Duke Tobin. Here are some stats that we'll roll through here. The past 10 years, 8 of the past 10 years, they have missed the playoffs. Duke Tobin, of course, has been in charge that whole run. Can't happen. He's been the de facto GM for 24 seasons. 11 of those teams have had a winning record, which means that more than 11 of those teams have had a losing record. So he's been doing it for 24 years. He's been doing it a very long time and only has teams with a winning record 11 times. He has a grand total since he has overseen operations, since he's been that de facto GM and controls the roster in which that takes the field for Cincinnati. His record is 184, 199, and 4. All right? That equates to an average season of a record of about 8 and 9. Anybody else across the NFL, if they're in a position of power like Duke Tobin and have been at it for 24 seasons and have an average record of 8 and 9, they are no longer employed with that organization, or they certainly don't have the same title as GM or de facto GM, right? But it's different here in Cincinnati. So that's the biggest takeaway. It's like, well, we've done it before, we've done it again. We know what we're doing here. But do you? You've been here for 24 years, and you have an average record of 8 and 9, and you've missed the playoffs every year in the last 10 years besides 2. Granted, you had great runs the years that you made it because of Joe Burrow. And you had a competent defense that was built well because of free agency. Give you credit for that. But that's not enough winning. And candidly, it's not close. And candidly, it is not close. And one thing that also I thought was maybe a possibility was entertaining a philosophical change or taking ownership for, hey, the way we're doing things right now isn't good enough. And we didn't get that from Duke Tobin either. And that was another huge takeaway from me. The scouting department. He continues to defend the size of the scouting department. His big word is collaboration, right? It's a collaborative effort here. And we like having a small scouting department because, it allows us to collaborate with one another and give us the best position to pick the right guys and handle things the correct manner in free agency there as well. He always spins it as if the small scouting department is a better thing than it is a worse thing, that it's a good thing and not a bad thing. Now, that to me is fascinating because it's his scouting department, but is it because Mike Brown won't pay to have other guys in that department, or is it Duke Tobin's decision to have a small scouting department? That to me is a fascinating question. I don't know the answer to it, and looking forward to asking that question to a future guest that we have on this show. But you look across the league, and I understand in life you don't want to just do things because everyone else is doing it. But look at the rest of the NFL. Nobody has a scouting department full of a handful of dudes. It's a big group, right? It's a big department, right? I don't even think the Bengals should be able to call their scouting department a department, right? It's just a collection of people. And I don't even think it's a committee. It's just a handful of dudes, right? And they call it this department. Well, it's like 3 or 4 guys, right? So I would have liked to seen a change there. I didn't think anybody should expect that, but hearing that, I think that would have, a lot of us would have been like, okay, that's some progress there. We'll take it, right? We're adding more guys to this department, but ultimately that did not happen either. And also there was no expression of regret over how some of the contract negotiations have gone down. Would have liked to see that as well. What if he came out and said, you know what? We messed around too long with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson. We should have gotten out ahead of that earlier. Right? It would have saved the Bengals millions of dollars, literally. I think that's something the fans don't necessarily understand. Like, yeah, it was great. We got Jamar and T. I was crediting the organization for doing that. They deserve credit for getting it done, but it cost them millions of dollars. If they had gotten it done earlier, that's millions of dollars they could have saved. That's a player in free agency that you can add to your roster that can affect winning. They weren't able to do that. All right, same with Trey Hendrickson. Why does it have to be some long, drawn-out, dramatic thing? And I know Hendrickson's not the easiest guy in the world to work with, but unfortunately for the Cincinnati Bengals, this seems like a reoccurring theme. I would have liked to see him come out there and say, you know what, we got a guy here in DJ Turner. We're going to get things done with him as soon as possible. Didn't really see that at all either. So a couple of big takeaways there, not changing, how they do things. It's basically like, well, we've done it before. We're going to do it again, even though you average a record of 8 and 9. You're not making changes to your scouting department until your operation, right? And again, we say it all the time. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Well, if you're not going to change how you operate, you're kind of staring at 8 and 9 in the face each and every year unless Joe Burrow can pull you out of it. Now, for what it's worth, Joe Burrow plays 17 games. You feel pretty good about him pulling you out of it. But he played 17 last year, and you missed the playoffs that year there as well. Would have liked to see some recognition of, hey, you know what? What we're doing right now isn't working, so we're going to change. Right? I respect him for taking accountability, but how about, making a change to help get better results on the football field. Certainly did not see that there as well. A couple other noteworthy things that he touched on. Said the focus is on pass rush. Well, no kidding. The pass rush needs to be better for the Cincinnati Bengals if they want to have a chance at competing each and every year in the National Football League. But the problem is that was an issue last year, pass rush. It should have been addressed last year. And you did it by picking a guy that had 4.5 sacks throughout his collegiate career in Shamar Stewart. I'm out on Shamar Stewart. A lot of you guys were out on Shamar Stewart as well. Unfortunately, the organization can't be out on him because they took him in the top 20 of the NFL draft, and this year he was only able to play, really, the grand scheme of things, a handful of games. Right? So we're going to see them run it back with Shamar Stewart. Hopefully he can develop into a solid player. But we said it a million times on this show, and everybody across town said it as well. That pick needed to be a guy that could come in and affect winning immediately. Not be some project player. Not be some guy where it's like, yeah, we'll check in on him in 3 or 4 years, and then maybe he can be a star. No, you didn't need Shamar Stewart to be a star right away, but you needed him to be a productive player. And I understand he had the injuries, but when he was out there, it was very clear he was not ready to be a productive player. I would have liked to see them take a little bit more ownership there and say, you know what? We trust Shamar Stewart. We believe in him. He's going to be a great Bengal here, and we're looking forward to year 2 with him. But we needed him to be really good in year 1, and he was not able to do that. I would have liked to see a little bit more accountability there. Call some people out, right? You're in front of the cameras, the local media. They're asking you questions. Call yourself out certainly as well, but call out some other aspects of this team if you're the guy in charge. Why not call out Shamar Stewart? And shoot, you can be excited about Myles Murphy going forward, but you should be able to sit back there and say, you know what? Part of the reason we haven't been so good the past few years and why we've been so bad on defense is it took too long for Myles Murphy to become a solid player for us, right? You can't take projects here for the Cincinnati Bengals. And the reason why it frustrates me so much and the reason why it frustrates you so much is we were saying the same things last offseason, and the Bengals still fell into that trap there as well. He shouted out some guys defensively in a positive light, one of which being Myles Murphy, one of which being DJ Turner, Dax Hill, and Jordan Battle, of course, there as well. We speculated here at the show Jordan Battle is going to be back in a starting capacity next year. I don't love that personally, but that's going to be the reality here, as those 4 guys are going to be back as starters, especially now after getting the praise from Duke Tobin, and you're going to figure out who the other 7 guys are around them. And it's the NFL, of course, so it's fair to assume that one of those guys, if not multiple, is going to get hurt at some point next year. But those are 4 guys that you're going to build around. That is a lock here at this point. Now, you have opportunities with DJ Turner and Dax Hill to move forward with them, to extend them, right, for them to really be leaders on this team. We'll get to the leadership component of this as well, and we'll see if Cincinnati is able to do that or if they're going to continue to mess around. Now, I don't think DJ Turner, right, he and his agent are going to look at the year they had and say, we want top-of-the-line money. Right, DJ Turner's a really good player. I think he could potentially be a 1 in this league. He shouldn't be getting paid as one of the highest-paid corners in the NFL. Can they get something done with DJ Turner? Or is that going to be something that lingers into camp and ultimately affects them as a football team going forward? All those guys are going to be back. We'll see how they handle their off seasons, whether or not they offer them big-time contracts or not. And another point that Tobin made was we need leaders on the defense. And that, to me, was alarming, right? Saying that they have leaders on the offensive side. Clearly they do. Jamar, Joe, guys on the offensive line. But basically saying, yeah, defensively we need somebody to take ownership there. Well, that's not good. Because DJ Turner's now been here for several years. Dax Hill has been here for several years. Myles Murphy has been here for several years. They should be ready to lead here at this point. So that was alarming to me. And he said it could come from somebody within the organization or somebody on the outside of the organization. And we said it a long time at this show where it's like, well, there's a lot of youth here. Who's going to step up and lead this group? Your best player is Trey Anderson, but he kind of seems like a selfish guy. Not sure if he's quite the leader that you were hoping him to be. Who's your leader of your defense going to be next year, right? We thought it was Logan Wilson, then he gets benched, then he wants out. That's not a good look for you. Seems like you really need to bring in a veteran player. It doesn't need to be some long-term deal, some veteran guy at probably linebacker to come in and be a starter for you for a year or 2 and really take ownership of this thing. But the fact that they have belief in Dax Hill and DJ Turner but didn't seem like they had much belief in them from a leadership perspective, that's certainly alarming there as well. So lots of different takeaways from Duke Tobin. The overarching one was there was no way you were going to come away with this thing going, being excited, being happy with everything Duke Tobin said, right? You would have liked to see them acknowledge that what they're doing right now and their setup isn't working. How about you adjust a little bit, right? You want to bring in some more scouts, beef up the department a little bit, handle things a little bit differently, right? Would have liked to hear that. Would have liked to hear him talk about that, hey, we can't mess around with these contracts anymore. We got to get out ahead of this thing, right? Didn't get that at all, right? It was nice to see that he clearly understood the defensive line wasn't good enough. Great, but we all said this last year, right? And their whole thing last year, I remember Duke Tobin saying this at the Combine, was like, well, we've added to the interior of the defensive line, bringing back B.J. Hill and bringing in T.J. Slayton, and that was going to shoring up that run defense was going to allow them to rush the passer a little bit better. And Cedric Johnson had some moments, right? Cam Sample had a moment or two. Osai had some moments as well, but clearly not good enough either. So they needed to bring in another edge guy that could contribute immediately. They weren't able to do that, and that whole thing kind of blew up in their face there as well. Would have liked to see him take a little bit ownership for that as well. The Geno Stone stuff, I don't know. I would have liked to hear him, go on about how Geno Stone, how it didn't work out. Didn't really get that from Duke Tobin either. So it'll be interesting to see how things progress. I give the Bengals credit. I give Tobin a little bit of credit for stepping up and taking the bullets at the microphone. I think Zach Taylor, they want him to be the voice. He's a good voice. But, it's kind of unfair for him to be the guy that has to stand up there and deal with all these personnel questions when that is not his thing. So Duke Tobin said at the end of his press conference that this is going to be something that they can continue to do, which I think is very positive. I think at the end of each year, regardless of when the season ends, he should stand up there and answer questions, do it again at the Senior Bowl, do it again at the NFL Combine, and go from there. They're not going to want to do it in season. They made that very clear. They want Taylor to be the voice of their organization during the year. That's fine. But, at the end of the year, he should always talk. I think that was positive. Credit to him for going as long as he did. Would have liked to see him address some more things, take ownership, make some changes. But, he was frustrated. He said he needs to be better. Great. But his solution seems like, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And they've been doing it for 24 years, and they average a losing record. So I think that's what frustrates a lot of us. We'll see if they can ultimately hit free agency out of the park. See if they can ultimately hit the draft out of the park as well, and we'll see if any of these guys can get extensions or if things are going to turn ugly. Now, luckily for Cincinnati, if things turn ugly with DJ Turner, it's not like things turn ugly with Jamar Chase, right? That's, a little bit different. But you would like to see them have a clean offseason where they address linebacker, they address safety, they have a solid draft, and there's no drama. And they can just kind of go in here with a third-place schedule and hope to win some big-time games and get back in the playoffs, because that's what that's what the expectation should be each and every year. When Joe Burrow is your quarterback, I've said this a million times, you should be in the playoffs every single year, and you haven't made it for 3 years now. Granted, there was a lot of Joe Burrow injuries in that time frame. I understand that, but it can't happen. It can't happen. When you have that piece in place, missing the playoffs shouldn't be an option. Tom Brady, he didn't miss the playoffs. Peyton Manning, those guys didn't miss the playoffs. Rodgers, Breeze, right? Those guys were in the playoffs pretty much yearly. That's how it should be here for Joe Burrow, and it's an immense shortcoming that hasn't been the case over the course of the past 3 years. All right, last 35 minutes or so here on the show, really just want to dive into these NFL playoff games because they were absolutely terrific. All of them. The last one, of course, last night, that didn't necessarily live up to it, but it was a competitive game for much of it. But the first few were just unbelievable. We'll kind of just go in chronological order here with the Rams and the Panthers. That was a 10.5-point spread. The Panthers, of course, come into the playoffs with a losing record, and I've got some issues with that, right? Credit to them for winning the division. They should absolutely still get into the playoffs. But should they really be hosting a home playoff game with a losing record? Probably not. And, getting a double-digit spread in the postseason isn't a great thing, but how about it? The game ended up being a terrific football game. A couple of takeaways. Bryce Young. I was saying that he absolutely should go 1 over Stroud in that draft, and I was big on Bryce Young. I thought he was going to have success here in the NFL. Did I think he was going to be an MVP guy, multiple Super Bowl champ guy? No, but I thought he definitely should be the first overall pick. And unfortunately for him, not only was he the first overall pick, Carolina traded up for him and gave up a ton in the process. That DJ Moore trade I talked about on the show last week, go look up what that trade is. Just a complete fleece job by the Bears. And the Panthers go up and get Bryce Young. Now, he got benched at one point last year, of course, so that isn't good. And usually when you have a guy like that get benched, there really isn't much coming back from it. Credit to Bryce Young, he has came back from it. And he proved this year and in this game that he's a starter in the National Football League. Right, that he's a starter in the National Football League. Now, should he get paid like the first overall draft pick? Absolutely not. That would be a huge mistake for Carolina. It should be a very team-friendly deal. Honestly, reminiscent of what Baker's deal was originally when he signed with Tampa. Right, it should not be much at all. But can he be a starter for you in the NFL and get to the playoffs? Compete in that division, maybe eventually win playoff games? Absolutely. I thought he played really, really well in the game. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. But he was clutch. He went toe-to-toe with Stafford. He used his legs, which is kind of a theme we'll get to as we go through all these games. This day and age of the NFL, man, particularly in the postseason, you got to use your legs if you have the opportunity to do so. Bryce Young did that and really kept his team in the game. And they made some plays defensively, had turned over Stafford once. And I give Dave Canales credit. I give their defensive coordinator, who, of course, came from Los Angeles, Evero, a lot of credit there as well. And, maybe the Panthers can be a force here going forward in that division, right? That division's always seemingly up in the air. It's the worst division in football. But that's an overarching success here for Carolina. It's one thing if they get in and they get blown out, right, by Los Angeles here in the opening round. That's not what happened. They hung right in there with McVay and Stafford, gave themselves an opportunity at the end, and just came up a little bit short. But huge success for Carolina here this year. I think you pick up Bryce's fifth-year option and kind of go from there, right? Again, is he going to be one of the best players ever, a Hall of Famer, Super Bowl winner? We don't have to get carried away, but he's a top 30 quarterback in the National Football League, and he should be the guy that they build around. Just can't overpay him. Just can't overpay him. Now from the Los Angeles perspective here. There was a point early in the year, and probably like the midpoint of the year, where we're looking around. It's like, this Rams team, man, they're the real deal. They might not lose, right? They got Stafford. They're playing well defense. McVay, who do you trust more than McVay? They got Puka, who's playing at an all-time level. Their two is Devontae Adams, who a couple of years ago everybody was saying the best receiver in the National Football League. And they've kind of come back down to life a little bit. They lose the game in primetime against Atlanta. They play all their starters the final game against Arizona, give up a lot of points in that game there as well. And you're kind of questioning what team will come into Carolina and perform, right? Because they had came into Carolina several weeks prior in the regular season and lost. And they get out to the start, guns blazing, boom, they're up 14-0. And I think a lot of people are like, that's kind of how we expected this game to go. And as I mentioned, Carolina hung in there with them and went toe for toe and stood right there with them and exchanged some blows. And how was Los Angeles going to respond there in that spot? Because if they would have lost that game, this season would feel like a huge failure. And if you come into the year with Super Bowl expectations and lose in the postseason, it kind of always feels like that. But if they, 10-plus point favorites, I get on the road. But if they would have dropped that game, man, that would have been, a huge kind of embarrassment, really, for Los Angeles if that had happened. But Matthew Stafford, we talked about it kind of coming into these playoffs. We discuss it frequently each and every year, but this year more than ever, considering the fact that, Mahomes wasn't in the equation, Jackson wasn't in the equation, Burrow wasn't in the equation, that if you had a head coach and a quarterback figured out here going into the postseason, you were going to be in a pretty good spot. And that proved true, really, through much of the games, which we'll talk about. But having Stafford there in that 2-minute drill was unbelievable. And seeing, that's kind of my favorite thing in football. It's, unfortunate when you're on the other side of it, as a fan. But getting a 2-minute drill in the postseason with an all-time quarterback, watching them operate is unbelievable. And what Stafford did on that final drive was insane. The ball to Parkinson to win it in the end zone was incredible. And he just didn't blink. And he kind of talked about it after the game. Very steady, very composed, understood the coverages that they were playing, and felt good about them going down and scoring points. Again, credit to Bryce Young for giving them a 4-point lead and making the Rams have to go 2-minute drill on the road, score a touchdown. Field goal would have done nothing for them, but Stafford was just too good. Protection certainly held up there as well. He got the ball to Puka. He got the ball to Devontae. Two great toys to have on the outside, obviously, and was able to come away with a huge victory and a huge game-winning drive for the Los Angeles Rams. And, you might take away like, well, they gave up 30-plus points to Carolina. This team might not be able to win the Super Bowl. It's all about surviving and advancing in this tournament. And I absolutely think the Rams still have a good shot at going in and winning the Super Bowl here this year. And they're going to go to Chicago. I would anticipate they go in there and pick up a win. We'll see what the weather conditions look like as the week progresses. But having a quarterback and a head coach in that spot that don't blink on the road with all that pressure and execute at that high of a level was pretty incredible. And the Rams pull off a huge victory. Now for the night game on Saturday, Packers-Bears. And, this one hurt me a little bit. I was all over the Packers last week. Felt very confident about them going into this game. And I talked about how I couldn't remember a 7 seed that hadn't won a game in a month plus having more life than Green Bay. And, the way they played in the first half, you're sitting there going, they're going to go into Seattle and give Seattle everything that they can handle. Right, and they were up 21-3 at half. Jordan Love was playing unbelievable. They were running the ball well enough. LaFleur was in his bag, and the Bears just absolutely could not stop them. Could not stop them at all. And then McManus has an opportunity there to kick a 55-yard field goal going into half and put them up 24-3, and he misfires. Right, good timeout from Ben Johnson. He made it prior to the timeout, and then he misses it. And that's a little, you're still down 21-3 if you're Chicago, but that's a little bit of life there if you're the Chicago Bears missing that field goal. And that was kind of a theme that would go on. But it was really a tale of two halves, and the script got completely flipped on Green Bay. And there's several takeaways from this game. We'll get to the Williams stuff in a second. But how their defense, the Chicago defense, was able to play one way in the first half and look like a completely different team in the second half. They could not stop Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur at all in the first half. And they couldn't pick up a first down, Green Bay, in the second half. That third quarter is just punt, 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 punt. And the Bears were hanging in there offensively. Caleb in the first half, I think Ben Johnson's always going to want to run the football, especially with those windy conditions. They didn't run it as well as they had hoped in the first half. And Caleb missed on a lot of throws, and they weren't very good on third down in the first half. And that's why, they had 3 points going in to halftime. And then the defense really stepped up. That's the story of the game, really, is how that defense was able to slow down that Green Bay offense so much, particularly in the third quarter. And then Caleb Williams finds himself in a spot where he's down. He only had 6 points entering the fourth quarter, and they scored 25 points in the fourth quarter. It is unbelievable, kind of reminiscent a little bit of how the Broncos have played this year, but the Bears and the Broncos, they just kick it into gear in the fourth quarter. And, I've been sitting up here all year saying, it's not sustainable. It's not something you can continue to rely on if you're these two teams. Well, they're both a couple of wins away from the Super Bowl. So if they continue to do it and make the Super Bowl and win it, credit to them if they're able to pull that off. But unbelievable what they were able to accomplish in the fourth quarter. Ben Johnson's terrific. We'll get to the handshake stuff in a second. But as far as a play caller and a head coach, he knows what he's doing. He absolutely knows what he's doing. And also from a personnel perspective, got to give a lot of love to Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles for acquiring Colston Loveland in the first round of the NFL draft. Had an injury, too, coming into this year, but they had their guy. They knew what they had in him. And, the defense, Caleb Williams, defense in the second half, Caleb Williams and Colston Loveland are the reasons they won that game. Over, I think, 130 yards catching the football. He can block. He was doing the dirty work. It was incredible athletic catches, and it was also run after catch there as well for Colston Loveland. He was tremendous. And I kind of, when they picked him, I was like, you probably want to go defense, and maybe it probably will be the defense that ultimately cost Chicago, but Colston Loveland's going to be a good player for a long time for them. He was terrific in this football game. And as I mentioned, the missed kicks for Green Bay, they missed the 2 field goals, missed a huge extra point as well. Had an opportunity, I think, with 2 minutes or so left to kick a field goal, go up 6. Ultimately, that wouldn't have really mattered because the Bears scored the touchdown. They would have went up 1 at that point. But then if the Packers had made the extra point, it would be a tie game. So, missing those kicks is huge, right? Kicking a football in a playoffs is absolutely huge. It's all about, taking points when you can. It's what Buffalo did such a great job of. We'll talk about that game in a second. But Green Bay missed some kicks, and Chicago was right there to capitalize. I've been hesitant to crown Caleb Williams. Now, I've been very clear about my take on Caleb Williams. When Chicago had the first overall pick the year they picked him, they absolutely had to take him, right? I'm a huge Drake May guy, but they had to take Caleb Williams with the raw talent that he had, and it's paying off for them, absolutely. That 4th and 8 play, that will go down in Bears history forever, especially if they can beat the Rams and continue to win. But, both feet off the ground. And that ball, some of the pictures that have come out from that where the ball's in the air and both of his feet are off the ground and just this body, he's rolling out left. His body's contorted in the opposite direction. And he floats it, layers it over the one defender, drops it down in front of the other 2. Just a perfect pass. And, if they don't complete that, if they don't pick up that 4th and 8, the game is absolutely over. The game is over. Green Bay wins. They're going to Seattle. right? But he pulls off that play, and then they continue to score after that. And, no Micah Parsons. That certainly reared its ugly head a little bit for Green Bay because they had opportunities there in the fourth quarter, right? Even if they gave up 20 points in the fourth quarter, gave up a lot of points, they gave up 25. And Van Ness had some moments there on the edge for them, but they needed that closer, and no Micah Parsons in that fourth quarter was huge. And my whole thing was, that defense, they still got some guys there, which they did, but ultimately they needed Micah Parsons in that fourth quarter. They were not able to close it out. And then you look up if you're the Packers, and it's kind of just falling on you. They had a chance there at the end to put together a game-winning drive, but you look up and you're like, how in the world are we losing this game here with less than 2 minutes left? And that was the case. And, Love had an opportunity. I thought it was a solid drive for Green Bay. Didn't manage the clock perfectly, but had a play there at the end and weren't able to execute. But to me, the takeaways, obviously Caleb Williams was brilliant in the fourth quarter, deserves a lot of credit for it. The team was a resilient group. They didn't give up. They didn't give in. That obviously is huge. Caleb Williams was kind of, I think part of the reason that he kind of frustrates me is, he's technically tough because he pops up, but he kind of lays there on the ground and acts like he's in agony after every single hit, whereas Josh Allen's just popping right up, right? But credit to him, he kept gutting through it. It did not look for good at all for Chicago there for a while. They stuck together. Their defense made huge plays, and they were able to win the game. But for Green Bay, this is an all-time choke job for them. And it's something that's going to stick with them for a really long time. I think you could argue it is a fireable offense, but to be very clear, I don't think that Green Bay should make that decision. I think Matt LaFleur absolutely should be back. There's some awkwardness there because his contract, right? So we're in a spot where it's like, well, do we fire him or do we extend him? Because a lot of coaches or a lot of GMs, ownership groups these days, they don't do the whole lame duck coaching thing like the Bengals did with Marvin Lewis, like Jerry Jones just did with Mike McCarthy, right? If you're going into your final year, usually you'll either get fired before that or you'll get extended. And that's kind of why it's an awkward spot for Green Bay. I would extend LaFleur. That's a loss that's going to haunt you for a really long time. But I got belief in him. What they were able to do offensively in the first half was incredible. And, they paid for Micah Parsons. And if you have Micah Parsons in this game, you win, despite the fact that you were kind of choking, right? But they got a lot that they need to clean up. I think the Packers can be back next year, absolutely. Don't think this was like their one chance or their one opportunity. Yeah, the Packers are going to be good for a long time. I would keep the core together. I would bring LaFleur back, but that's going to – until they, win a Super Bowl, that's going to hurt until then, right? It's going to hurt for a very, very long time. And I don't know what it is. Ben Johnson just doesn't like Matt LaFleur. He talked about it when he got the Bear job, how he enjoyed beating Matt LaFleur twice a year, right? And credit to him, they win the come-from-behind game at Soldier Field in the regular season, and then this unbelievable win there as well. Kind of went viral for some of the things, the curse words he was pointing towards Green Bay in the locker room after the game. And, the handshake was very brief. I mean, he kind of did it on the run, kind of the ultimate sign of disrespect there. But it's Bears-Packers. It's a heated rivalry, and that's something Green Bay is going to have to live with for a really long time, and that's going to sting for a long time there as well. I believe in Love. I believe in the guys they have. I believe in LaFleur as the head coach. But ultimate choke job, and got to give credit to Caleb Williams. I think the magic will run out at some point. I like the Rams this week, despite the fact it's going to be, in Chicago. But what an all-time fourth quarter performance and some huge moments. That throw on 4th and 8, that's record book, history book type stuff. And you got to tip your hat to the Bears for pulling off that kind of a win. All right, then we get to the Sunday games. I talked about Bills-Jags kind of being the most compelling game, I thought, going into Wild Card Weekend, and I think it certainly lived up to that narrative, in my opinion. What Josh Allen did, man, I think to me that's the biggest takeaway from Wild Card Weekend. I mean, that's Michael Jordan stuff, what Josh Allen did. He pulled a Michael Jordan against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Comes into the game with a kind of a serious foot injury that had caused him to be a limited participant in practice. And then immediately a defensive lineman lands on his head, so he's getting checked for a concussion. Looked like his neck gets twisted around there as well. And then after that, he bangs his index finger on the helmet of his offensive lineman. And to me, that's always, it's a violent game. These guys, these quarterbacks, they get hurt. But, have you ever, jammed your finger and tried to throw a ball? It is very, very uncomfortable. And that's not just a jam. That his finger is in trouble. and he's able to throw the football the rest of the game. And you could tell that it wasn't the same coming out of his hand. It was a little bit different, but still was able to make those huge throws. And then the first touchdown he runs for, his knee gets all twisted up. I mean, there's a lot of guys that don't come back from that. Now, he's so big and strong that he's able to take a hit like that. I think like a lot of guys that something snaps there and you're not able to continue, but nothing snapped, I guess, and it just kind of got twisted awkwardly. But then he's got the knee. So he's got the head and neck, he's got the foot, he's got the knee, and he's got the finger, and he's got no help around him, right? The defense was kind of just holding on for dear life. We'll get to Lawrence in that side here in a second, but I mean, there was procedural penalties from Buffalo, false starts, illegal shifts, stuff early in the game that they had to overcome. There's nobody that can win on the outside for them. The Coleman, he had one nice catch down the sideline, but that pick looks to be a miss. Their guy that they go to is Khalil Shakir, who's a heck of a football player, but if you're in postseason and that's like your go-to guy, I mean, that's tough, right? And then your whole thing all year was that you're the best rushing team in the NFL with James Cook, and the Jags pretty much stymied that as well. So Josh Allen literally had to do this by himself, and he had to be just about perfect in this game, and he was pretty much perfect in this game. Now, if you look at the box score, you're like, well, I mean, that looks like a solid game, but it's not, a perfect game by any stretch. He didn't make any mistakes. He took what the defense gave him. Buffalo understood what they had to do. From a game management perspective, I got to give Sean McDermott a lot of credit. This was not a game where they could afford to, not be good on fourth down and kind of recklessly go for it. Like, they had to take the points, right? They absolutely had to take the points. Credit to Prater. He made some huge kicks in the game. And, that was going to be their MO here. And usually you see, like, Josh Allen do some reckless stuff or make, one really bad decision or whatever. Didn't really have that. He took care of the football. He took what the defense gave him. He took his shots when he could. And he was doing it while being incredibly banged up. So that was all-time stuff from Josh Allen. And statistically, is it one of his best playoff games ever? No, but what he does in the postseason, man, is truly unbelievable. And I was all over Jacksonville in this game, and, I don't feel bad about it either because I'm watching that game. The Bills had no business winning that game. There is not another quarterback, and you know how much I love Joe Burrow. I don't know if you could put another quarterback in Josh Allen's place and they win that game. I really don't know if you could. What he was able to do was absolutely unbelievable. Going to be a different animal going to Denver, right? The number 1 overall seed, and I can't even imagine the type of pain that he is in this morning. The foot, the head, neck, the finger, and the knee, and there's probably other stuff too going on with Josh Allen, but just unbelievable. Just an unbelievable individual effort from him. That's Michael Jordan. That's Kobe Bryant. Like, that is ridiculous all-time stuff from him. Again, they had no business winning that game, right? It was very clear that Jacksonville, team-wise, was the better team, but Allen just said, get on my back, as he's done multiple times throughout his career. Give them a heck of a lot of credit for that. Now the Jacksonville side. Lawrence, I think, was fine in the game, and I thought he was borderline great in the fourth quarter. Clearly got outplayed by Josh Allen. They had some opportunities early in the game to execute and score. Like, going into halftime and they were losing, like, they shouldn't have been losing at halftime. That was not good. And you always talk about these postseason games. One play can really swing the momentum and kind of spin the game on its head a little bit there. And there was a 4th and 2 play where Lawrence got the first down, right, but his knee shin was down while he was getting touched. So when he was getting ready to lunge forward, I don't know if his foot kind of slipped on the surface or whatever, but the knee comes down and he's getting contacted and he's short of the line of the game. It was a 4th and 2, and that was a huge spot where it's like, well, the Jags look like they're going to get points here and, get a lead here in this game. So that was a huge play. And then the interception. That's something with Trevor Lawrence that, especially when you're going against Josh Allen, that's not something that you're going to be able to overcome. It's really not. And that first interception was just horrible. Just didn't see the linebacker and just threw it right to him and gave Josh Allen a short field. That's not something you can do. He missed on some stuff, but as I mentioned, when the fourth quarter came around, he was really, really good. I thought he was really good, and I got to knock Cohen a little bit because Basil Tootin was unbelievable through parts of that game. ETN was having success running the ball there as well. they kind of got away from the run a little bit there. And then they got the lead there with how, at the very end of the game. So it's like, well, it kind of worked out for them. But I think they could have done a better job of running the football because they were having so much success doing it. And that potentially would have put Josh Allen on the sidelines for a little bit longer. And I think that would have been very productive. So getting away from the run there, I kind of question what exactly was going on there. But, the reporter kind of is going viral for complimenting Liam after the game, which I get the job of a reporter. It's not really your job there in that spot. I'm willing to make an exception for this because it's Jacksonville, right? It's a team that, Cohen takes over. They've been a mess for so long. You think they got the quarterback in place, but to rattle off as many wins as they did to end the year, win the division, get a home playoff game, and, go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen. They didn't play their best, but they absolutely played well enough to win, I think, and they just, Superman took over and they weren't able to get it done. But Jacksonville's trending in the right direction. I don't think this is a one-off. I don't think this is a fluke. I think they're here to stay. It's just that, Lawrence has to be a little bit cleaner. Really good in the fourth quarter. That last touchdown was unbelievable. Some of the throws he made on third down in the fourth quarter were unbelievable, but just need a more consistent product if you're going against a Josh Allen, a Joe Burrow, a Patrick Mahomes, and weren't able to quite do that. But it's hard to imagine Buffalo continuing to win. I'm here for it. I love Josh Allen. If you love pro football, you should love Josh Allen there as well. But just Superman stuff from him. Superman, otherworldly stuff. They had no business being in that game. McDermott deserves credit for how he managed the game, understanding that, they couldn't be reckless in the game. They needed to take the points when they could. Had some crucial stops there, particularly the middle points of that game. So I give him some credit because he was coaching for his job in this game. And Josh Allen may have saved him his job. We'll see how they look in Denver. I bet against Josh Allen once. I'm probably not going to do it again for as long as he's playing this year. But it's going to be a huge uphill battle, and he's going to be far from 100% in that game. But just all-time stuff. All-time stuff for Josh Allen. It's only a matter of time before he wins a Super Bowl. Not saying it's this year, but he'll get it done eventually. He's too good not to. Moving on to the Niners and Eagles game. It's interesting, man, with Philadelphia. They're such a weird team. Reed was alluding to this, and it's not just this year, right? I mean, you remember when they won like 10 games a couple of years ago in a row, and then they just completely fell on their face going into the playoffs and lost to Tampa right away. Like, they've done this for several years. We'll spend a little time here on the Philadelphia. I think the biggest takeaway is what Purdy and Shanahan were able to do for San Francisco. But it shows you how important coordinators are. I mentioned this on Off the Bench. The Lions dealt with it this year. They lose Johnson. They lose Glenn. They lose the playoffs. And, I think Dan Campbell does a great job, and he'll have him back in the playoffs next year more than likely. But Sirianni without Kellen Moore, and he puts his buddy Patullo as the OC, and that just has been dysfunctional all year. Saquon had such a great year last year, but clearly he took a lot of damage and wasn't, fully 100% this year and didn't have that same burst and explosiveness, and they needed him to be that player for them to win playoff games this year. And the biggest thing on Jalen Hurts, and I'm a Jalen Hurts guy, he's a Philly legend forever for what he did in the Super Bowl last year. Both of his Super Bowl games have been the best 2 games of his life, deserves a ton of credit for that. But he's not just a pocket guy. And I don't know if he was banged up or what have you, but he has to be outside the pocket, and he has to be more of a dual threat guy if they want to fully be at their peak as an offense. And he was never that this year, and it was always kind of just stale and boring. It was a tough watch. Right? And they got 2 tremendous receivers and a tremendous tight end and Saquon Barkley. Right? If you're sitting there and you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley, that should not be a boring product offensively, which I think is a direct indictment on their head coach who's offensively minded and their OC and Patullo. And we'll see if a change is made. I think there's a world where Sirianni loses his job, as crazy as that sounds. But just a huge disappointment from Philadelphia. That roster has so much talent on it. And to be that inept offensively against a unit in San Francisco that's basically running a practice squad out there, that's not good. That's not good at all, and I would expect some changes to be made in Philadelphia. But the big takeaway is what Shanahan and Purdy were able to do. Right, the MVP of Wild Card Weekend is Josh Allen, but right there at that second spot is absolutely Brock Purdy. Again, if you didn't watch the game, looking at the box score, he had 2 picks, right? Didn't throw for 1,000,000 yards, right? Didn't rush for 1,000,000 yards either. What Brock Purdy was able to do in this game was unbelievable. unbelievable. And it's time people, and I've been on this for a while, like you got to recognize Brock Purdy as one of the best quarterbacks in this league. I'm not putting him in the same category. I'm not saying top 5 or whatever, but top 10, you need to begin to have that conversation with Brock Purdy because he's a dog, right? Started in the beginning of the game, and it's windy too, and he's not supposed to have the biggest arm or whatever, ripping some throws through the wind there, and boom, you get out to a start where you get 7 points on him immediately out of the gate and generate a little bit momentum for yourself. But what he has been able to overcome is incredible. George Kittle, the face and heartbeat of their team, he goes down in that game. Decently early in that game, he pops his Achilles, boom, he's gone. Right? They already were without Pearsall. They've been without Ayuk all year as well. And what does Shanahan like to do? He wants to run the ball with Christian McCaffrey. They are a run-first team. That is what Kyle Shanahan is. And they weren't able to do it. McCaffrey had like 40-plus yards. So they had to sit there and say, Brock, you got to drop back and you got to throw the football. And you're throwing to guys like DeMarcus Robinson and Tonjes, the backup tight end. Like the guys he is throwing to, and Juwan Jennings there as well, and Juszczyk, your fullback. Like those are the guys that you're throwing to in these huge moments. And he was able to pick up timely first downs late in that game. Philly was able to build a lead and kind of sit on it for a little bit. But, he had the interceptions. He had to overcome. Quinyon Mitchell's a heck of a player. Probably don't want to test him. But that's who Purdy is. Like with Brock Purdy, I can live with interceptions. He's a gunslinger. That's part of his DNA. He can make some great plays. You're going to have to live with some, costly ones. Luckily for them, none of them were pick six, and they were able to kind of hang on there despite those 2 interceptions. But the guys that he was throwing to, overcoming the mistake at the end of the half where they looked like they were going to be in a good spot to get a field goal off, and then Purdy fumbles near the boundary. It's a great play call by Shanahan. But just using his legs when he had to. Again, didn't run for many yards, but, the extending plays on third down when he had to run, he did. The extended play on, when they hit McCaffrey on what ended up being the game-winning touchdown was incredible as well. So Brock Purdy, they absolutely have an opportunity to go into Seattle and win. We saw that game, the finale, competing for the 1 seed there at the end of the regular season. I think there's a world where San Francisco absolutely goes in there and wins. But in what they've been able to do from a coaching perspective, I've been on this all year about Shanahan. He has my vote, if I had a vote, right? I would vote for him for Coach of the Year. This is, he's had several elite coaching jobs. This is his best. You got 2 linebackers out there starting and playing the whole game. Kendricks being one of them, veteran guy, played with Minnesota and Dallas, that hasn't been on the team for more than a month. Like that is absurd. And they're going into Philadelphia in the playoffs and winning. Just injuries all over the place. Their guys, their future Hall of Famer, Fred Warner, been without him for much of the year. Bosa, their guy off the edge, haven't been with him. Couldn't get pressure on the quarterback all year long. And to be able to put that group together and win, Robert Saleh deserves a ton of credit there for that as well. Upton Stout, the rookie, he's tremendous. Had some guys on the outside making plays. Certainly reaped the benefits of A.J. Brown having a horrible game. He's going to talk and pout all year and then drop all those balls in the playoffs. That was embarrassing, certainly for him. But what they were able to do defensively, hanging in there, I get the Eagles' operation offensively has been inept, but, giving up 19 points, the clutch stops when they got them. We'll see if that can continue against Seattle. Again, they held Seattle to 13 points last time they played with the same kind of core with all the injuries. But now you add Kittle to that mix as well. But, as long as you have McCaffrey and Purdy, you always have a chance. By the way, what McCaffrey can do, catching the football is insane. All right, McCaffrey's one of the best talents that, I've seen in my life. Running the ball in between the tackles, but out of the backfield, he had the one where he climbed the ladder on third down, and the one that Juwan Jennings threw to him on the trick play, that is not an easy catch at all. Like, that's a catch that, like, Jamar Chase makes it, and you go, oh, that's a really good catch. Then you got a running back in Christian McCaffrey making it. So McCaffrey is unbelievable. Shanahan's unbelievable. Purdy is unbelievable, and they're a couple wins away from going back to the Super Bowl, which with the injuries they've sustained, the guys that they're playing, like DeMarcus Robinson, Juszczyk, Jennings, Tonjes, these are the guys. Like, there was a guy, and Burkhardt was saying this on the broadcast, he was like, oh, yeah, he hasn't caught a ball since 2021. This guy's a practice squad guy, and he's out here against Philly in the playoffs, and you're throwing him the ball. And it's going to be more of that going forward. We'll see if Pearsall can come back. That's going to be huge. I think he was up in the air, his status going into this game. But that's going to be huge for them. If they can get Pearsall back against Seattle, they really have a chance. But it's time for people to understand that Brock Purdy is that guy. He does not blink, and he is a terrific player. He's got Shanahan. He's got McCaffrey. He certainly reaps the benefits of that. But doing what he did without Kittle, without Pearsall, without Ayuk all year, with that group of defenders that's just a bunch of random guys thrown together competing for Bob Saleh. It's tremendous, and we've been on the Niners all year, and for them to win this game against Philadelphia, what an accomplishment! What an accomplishment that is for San Francisco. And lastly, New England and Los Angeles, the Chargers. We were on New England in this spot there as well. Drake May, he gets that first playoff victory under his belt. And it was kind of eerie watching that game because you're sitting there and you go, oh, I've seen postseason football at this particular venue at night. Right? Lots of playoff games at Gillette Stadium. Certainly me growing up watching, Tom Brady. It's like it just kind of felt – things oddly felt back to normal, kind of seeing up Gillette Stadium, playoff atmosphere. Yeah, it just kind of felt right. Not to say that you liked it, but it just kind of felt like things were kind of back to normal a little bit there. And was Drake May great in the game? No, he took some huge shots. Both these quarterbacks obviously did. He's got to play better if they want to get to the Super Bowl, absolutely. Took some huge shots, fumbled a couple as well. He made some big throws when he had to. The touchdown to Hunter Henry, kind of the dagger a little bit, was beautiful to see. That was a beautiful ball from Drake May. And we talk about these quarterbacks, the ones that had success. Jalen Hurts didn't do this. Guys that were running the football when they had to. You saw it with Josh Allen, right? You saw it with Bryce Young. He was able to keep his team in the game for a long time, right? You saw it with Herbert on the other side a little bit as well. It didn't really work out for them. Right, but you saw it with Allen. Lawrence, you had to use his legs a little bit. Additionally, Caleb Williams, right, a little bit. Jordan Love, a little bit as well. But Drake May's legs are probably the prime reason to go along with the pass rush. But as the reason offensively they were able to win this game. And he made enough plays, and he's going to have to be better going forward. Vrabel, he managed the game. You always kind of knew this game was going to be a little ugly. Right, this wasn't going to be, it had the opportunity to still be a close game, but it's Harbaugh, it's Vrabel. It was going to be smash mouth football, low scoring game, and that's ultimately what you got here. And there's going to be a lot of people on the Los Angeles side that are hitting the panic button. I'm sure Herbert is getting drugged through the mud nationally, maybe even locally out in Los Angeles. To me, that's ridiculous. And Reed said this on Off the Bench. I completely agree. If you were to insert an Allen or Mahomes or Burrow into that situation, it doesn't look quite as bad, but they don't win. Right? They don't win. He didn't have a chance in this game. We all drag offensive line play in this city of Cincinnati, and rightfully so. But, that line that Burrow took to the Super Bowl, that was a horrible offensive line. But this operation for the Chargers is much worse than that. I mean, he did not have a prayer in this game. So everyone's going to talk about, he's 0-3 in all three games. He's, had bad games statistically. He didn't have a chance. I mean, what he was able to do, playing however many games he did with the broken hand, he's always beat up. Right? People want to say, the Bengals are, coming up short when it comes to protecting Joe Burrow, and they're ruining his career. Well, how about the Chargers and what they've done to Justin Herbert? I mean, he is hurt all the time. Now, a little bit different from Burrow. He has some injuries that he's able to play through. But, I mean, at this point, he's not going to be able to play very long in the NFL because the punishment that he takes on a year in, year out basis is insane. He's probably got so many injuries that he's dealing with right now, including, of course, the fractured hand. But he didn't have an opportunity in this game. Now, they tried to protect him. They paid their two guys. They had Joe Alt and Slater, of course, are supposed to be and are two of the best tackles in the league, and they both get hurt. And that kind of derailed their season, really, before it could get going. Credit to Harbaugh for pulling out 11 wins. They'll get some postseason success here eventually, a playoff win here eventually. But with that offensive line play, they had no shots. And, Milton Williams, Barmore out of Alabama, some real dudes up there defensively for New England, making all types of plays. But it was just kind of basic stuff that obviously they were getting bullied. The Chargers were a little bit, but they couldn't handle the stunts. Like sometimes they would have one guy and he'd peel around and nobody was there, and he would just deck Herbert. And he had absolutely no chance there. And also, the Patriots, they deserve some credit to the buttons that they've pushed defensively because you knew the front was going to be solid enough with Milton Williams and Barmore. But, you had questions in the secondary. Christian Gonzalez is a stud. Now, he got hurt. That's going to be huge for them, depending on if they, playing Houston or Pittsburgh, if he's going to be able to go. He exited that game, but he was clamps on whoever he was on for the majority of that game. And then putting the two youngsters back there at safety, right? I mean, they started the year with Peppers and Duggar, who got traded to Pittsburgh, and now they got two youngsters back there. They're playing competent football there on the back end. So the Chargers probably looks different if they had both their tackles. It finally cost them. Pretty amazing they were able to still win 11 games. Herbert, he's still a franchise guy. People are going to say crazy stuff about him this offseason. He needs to be protected a little bit better. And they need to go get a guy on the outside, too. I think Ladd McConkey is a great player, but if he's your one, I mean, I don't know if you can have your one be that small, right? I mean, Brady was able to get away with it with Edelman, but he had Gronk, right? You know, they don't have that big-time tight end that can make huge plays for him. Keenan Allen had an off game. Usually he's Mr. Third Down, Mr. Reliable. You just get him the ball on third down, and he makes great plays for you. He had a couple of drops as well, but with how bad the offensive line was playing, Herbert needed to get it out of his hands quickly, and he didn't have any receivers that was winning. You know, Johnston, he looked like a bust early in his career, has kind of came back and has offered them some presence down the field. I don't know if he can be a guy, one of your main guys going forward next year. They got to go get a weapon on the outside, retool the offensive line, get some guys healthy there as well. But defensively, I thought they made some really good plays. Defense was certainly good enough to keep them in that game. But just, you talk about attrition in this league all the time. Eventually, it comes back to get you, unless you're the San Francisco 49ers, but logic would tell you it's going to run out at some point. Like, if you saw Brock Purdy hoisting that trophy, that would be awesome, but, I don't know if you can do that with that defense and all those injuries, right? And now Kittle being hurt, too. At some point, the injuries will catch up to you in the playoffs if you're not able to stay healthy, and that's kind of, what Los Angeles ran into this year with their tackles. But good for the Patriots to kind of get that first win. Wasn't pretty, but doesn't need to be pretty this time of year, and they will see. They get to host another playoff game in the divisional round next week, and obviously we will see tonight who they will be playing, whether it be the Houston Texans or the Pittsburgh Steelers. But these games were tremendous, and you couldn't ask for much more. Enjoy it while you can. Hopefully the divisional round can kind of live up to it, and then it's 3 more games, right? The championship games and the Super Bowl, and then we're talking about free agency, which is still very compelling, and we'll have a ton of stuff to talk about here on the show, draft and free agency-wise. But these games, man, enjoy this coming weekend, the divisional round. Enjoy tonight because it's unbelievable. But tonight feels like a low-scoring game. Pittsburgh defense has to play well in order for them to have a chance. I think they will. C.J. Stroud has played terrific in the playoffs, has a playoff win each of his first 2 years in the league. But, Pittsburgh's not going to be able to score a lot of points in this game. So if the Pittsburgh defense doesn't play well and Stroud pops off, it's going to be over. But I'm not anticipating that happening. I think there's a lot of value here with Pittsburgh at +3 here in this spot. Rodgers gets Metcalf back, so finally he has a guy that he can throw to on the outside. I'm expecting him to play well, but he's going to get hit a lot in this game as well. The Texans defense, in my opinion, we talk about Seattle, we talk about Denver, and this Texans defense is the best in the league. And they're going to be flying around primetime on the road, kind of feeding off that energy of an away crowd, I think. And Will Anderson's going to be great. Stingley and Metcalf, that matchup's going to be fascinating to watch. But I think Rodgers is going to keep them in the game. Kind of what Josh Allen did, right? Just didn't make that mistake and was like, that's kind of how they have to win. Like, Pittsburgh's not going to blow out Houston. If they're going to win, it's going to be a close game where Rodgers protects the ball, is good on third down, have some success running it. Gainwell is going to be a huge factor in this game for Pittsburgh, both handing him the football and out of the backfield as a guy catching some passes. I think you're going to see him get opened up a little bit more in the passing game with Metcalf coming back. But I can't wait for this game. It's Aaron Rodgers back in the playoffs in Pittsburgh. The environment, all those ugly, terrible towels are going to be waving around. And it's going to be a defensive game. Doesn't mean it can't be fireworks. So I expect it to be close, competitive, and I'll take Pittsburgh +3 in this spot. But these games, man, the divisional round is going to be tremendous. I think the Niners have a lot of life going to Seattle, and I think the Bills have a lot of life going to Buffalo. So congrats to Seattle and Denver for getting the 1 seed, but congrats. You get Josh Allen, and you get this Niner team that just simply won't go away regardless of how many injuries come their way. So it should be outstanding. We'll talk a little bit more this week about Indiana, but that run that they're going on is tremendous. We were all over the Hoosiers there in that spot against Oregon. And, I said this before the game, and it rings even more true now after. Not comparing Mendoza to Joe Burrow, but it just has a similar feel where it's like this team and this quarterback are not going to be denied. And that's kind of how it feels. Credit to Cristobal and Carson Beck and Malachi Toney and those guys defensively for Miami. But doesn't really feel like they have much of a chance going into the national title game a week from tonight. And it's in Miami. Congrats to the Hurricanes. They don't have to get on a plane and travel anywhere, but you feel like it's going to be 70% Hoosiers in that stadium as that fan base travels, man. And what an electric atmosphere that was in the Peach Bowl, and a huge win for them. And I guess Oregon, they got to get over this. I'm a big believer in Dan Lanning, but the way their seasons have ended the past 2 years, it's just them getting clowned on. And Ohio State and then Indiana, obviously the latest. Still a lot of belief in Dan Lanning. By the way, they get Dylan Raiola, which – I mean, talk about being overrated. I don't know. We'll see if Dante Moore comes back and then he'd be the backup, or if they're going to roll with Raiola next year. But I've got some concerns there if I'm an Oregon fan. That I don't know if that's the right guy that you want to bring in, but we'll see. Appreciate everyone as always hanging out here at the show. Another great Monday, and certainly looking forward to what we've got going the rest of the week. We'll have some guests on certainly as well, some clips on YouTube, social media. Check us out. I'm at StoneShields _ on Twitter. The show is at the Stone Shields on Twitter, and then Seabox Sports, of course, on Twitter as well. Subscribe to the channel. We certainly appreciate you, and looking forward to another great week at the show as we progress through mid-January here at this point. Lots of great stuff going on from an NFL perspective. But appreciate everyone as always for hanging out, and until tomorrow, take care, everybody.